well. A man named Leroy Brown. Now Leroy, more in trouble. You see, he stand about 6'4". All over downtown ladies call him treetop lover. All the men just call him sir. And it's bad, bad, Leroy Brown. The baddest man in the whole damn town. Better than old King Kong. And meaner than a junkyard dog. Now Leroy, you're just another stupid boy. You're just another stupid boy. Yeah, I'd done anything for you. Just about anything you'd ask me to. I put your needs above my own. And I can't stand to be alone, but I live. Lord, I'm sick and low. Uptown got its hustlers. The Bowery got
Welcome to the 70s versus the 80s, my fellow pop culture loving babies.
son of a gun.
And if you ever pretended that you were 007 and you listened into your neighbor's private phone conversation on your first generation cordless phone, then this is the podcast for you.
Oh, Big Jimbo, just because.
Hello, everybody. This is Wolfman Mike on the mic, and I can talk Jim Croce all night. I can talk Gear Daddies all night, but I can't talk Tiny Tim all night. I mean, there's just never no reason to do that.
Come tiptoe through the tulips with me. Oh, tiptoe from the garden.
Named Jim.
And as always, I am joined by the one they call Spunky Comstock. He's pretty fly for a broad guy. It's Brian. And in case you can't remember what Brian sounds like, he sounds a little something like this.
Minnesotans want a border wall built to keep out all those Canadians trying to steal our Zamboni driving jobs.
Yeah, I wanna drive the Zamboni.
And guys, we have another great episode today. So in our first segment, we're going to do our music appreciation. We're going to do Jim Croce, an artist from the early 70s. And then we're going to do the Gear Daddies, an artist from the late 80s, early 90s. And this is a really great segment because we bring you songs that you never knew in the first place, or you did know, but you didn't know that they were all from the same artist. So hopefully this will give you some more fun songs to add to your summer playlist. And then for our second segment, you know the Summer Olympics are almost here, so we're going to talk all the 1970s and 80s Olympics. We're going to talk about that one great Olympic athlete where nobody uses his name anymore. And then once again, we're going to talk about that 1984 McDonald's Olympic promotion because I still can't believe that actually happened. So we have a lot of fun stuff to talk about, so let's get into it right now.
Well, the south side of Chicago is the baddest part of town. And if you go down there, you better just beware of a man named Leroy Brown. Now Leroy.
Last episode, Mike, we did a little bit of music appreciation, sharing maybe some overlooked artists from the 70s and 80s. And I want to continue that on this episode. I'm going to bring to the table an artist that was very early in the 70s, but maybe is the epitome of that 70s singer-songwriter feeling, and that is the late Jim Croce.
Yeah, this is a good one, Brian. This is a guy we're going to find out he dies pretty young, as we talk about a lot on this show. And he seemed like he was still working like construction and stuff. I don't, and then a lot of his hits didn't come out until after his death. So he was kind of a working musician. He was still working odd jobs.
Yeah.
These songs are known forever, though, that he wrote.
One of the things that I wanted to talk about, to start off in talking about it, is I believe that working those jobs while being a musician allowed him to write these songs that really resonate with us as working stiffs. It really speaks to us, and that's why these songs are so real and so able to capture your imagination. He had started off wanting to be a musician, got married in, I think, 66. His parents gave him a $500 wedding gift that they wanted him to use to record an album so that the album would flop and he'd get that silly notion of trying to be a musician out of his head, the way most parents would be with their children. and they cut, like, I think they printed 500 albums of that first one, and all 500 sold. So of course he proved that he was onto something. But yeah, early in the 60s, he kind of was still taking odd jobs. He really wasn't going at it full time. It wasn't until ABC Records got him a deal in, I think it was like 71, where he started recording his albums. He had one number one hit while he was alive, and that is probably the song he's most recognized for, and that's Bad Bad Leroy Brown.
Bad, 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 Leroy Brown, baddest man in the whole downtown, better than old King Kong.
But the reason we do these is so that we can dig in deeper beyond just that one song that we know by these artists.
Yeah, you really summed it up well there, Brian. It's such a blue collar. I mean, Bad Bad Leroy Brown. It's funny. It's very blue collar. It just kind of rolls. What I like about Croce is his songs just kind of roll at you like butter. They just go down so easy. You want to hear the next line because it just rolls out of them so easily.
He kind of idolized or tried to model himself in his early part of his career after a Gordon Lightfoot, and he's very much the American Gordon Lightfoot, or you could say that Gordon Lightfoot ended up becoming the Canadian Jim Croce. The second number one hit he had, which was re-released after his tragic passing, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit later, was Time in a Bottle. And that is, to write that at the age he did, we talked last episode about these songwriters writing songs at an early age. So this would have been a song he wrote in his mid-20s, but definitely capturing the feeling of this time on Earth is fleeting. It's going to go by in a hurry, and to do what you can to enjoy it as it's going by.
Let's listen to a snippet, Brian. I mean, this, like we talked about last week, he was in his mid-20s. This sounds like somebody reflecting back on a long life. So let's just listen to a snippet of that.
If I had a box just for wishes and dreams that had never come true, the box would be empty except for the memory of how they were answered by you. But there never seems to be enough time to do the thing.
Then the next one is kind of that you're struggling and you got to reach out to someone for help, and sometimes it's tough to make that call. But he has a song called Box Number 10 where he's out on his own, but he could use some help, and you know, everything's kind of going wrong, but he still wants to try to keep pursuing it, and he's reaching out. You know, he's calling back to his parents.
Well, I was gonna be a great success. Things sure ended up a mess. But in the process, I got messed up too. But hello, mama and dad, I had to call collect, 'cause I ain't got a cent to my name. But I'm sleeping in the hotel doorway, and tonight they say it's gonna rain. And if you'd only send me some money, well, I'll be back on my feet again. Send it in care of the Sunday Mission Box number
One of the things
10.
that strikes me with these early 70s musicians is this is back before it was easy to make long distance phone calls. There's a lot of correspondence by writing. I know he has the song that I Had to Say I Love You in a song. It's kind of reaching out to someone while he's out touring and everything, that he can't speak to them except through his songs. Everyone knows I'm an Allman Brothers fan. Galadriel Allman, Duane Allman's daughter, wrote a fantastic book, and some of the things in it are correspondence between her mother and Duane Allman while he's on the road. You know, it's like on Holiday Inn stationery and stuff like that. And it's tough to believe in this day and age of instantaneous, you can email, text, Skype, Zoom, all these different things where you can see people face to face, have instantaneous conversations with ease. And that wasn't the case, you know, in the 70s for these musicians and for us as a population. And so listening to these Jim Croce songs really spells that out about how it was tougher to communicate back in the 70s.
Yeah, and I think you really hear that in his song Operator, which is my favorite Jim Croce song. And he's just like reaching out and he's singing to the operator or talking to the operator because he can't get through to who he's trying to reach. Somebody should do a podcast on these old school operators. They must have heard some crazy stuff every day when they went in to work. Just people, they must have heard some crazy stuff.
Operators and bartenders should all probably have written books.
Operator, well, could you help me place this call? See, the number on the matchbook is old and faded. She's living in LA with my best old ex-friend Ray. Gosh, she said she knew well and sometimes hated.
And then maybe that whole working man thing might be summed up in the working at the car wash blues.
Steadily depressing, low down mind messing, working at the car wash blues. Well, I shouldn't be sitting in an air-conditioned office in a swivel chair.
Yeah, all his songs, they're so blue-collar and they're so funny. I mean, and then he comes in, with songs Operator and Time in a Bottle, which are like almost sound like a different artist, except for all the meaning behind it.
Right?
He still has all that meaning behind it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's the same person that wrote Operator, Time in a Bottle, Box Number 10, Walking Back to Georgia. Also wrote like Roller Derby Queen, and then there's some other ones that are a little more just fun and tongue in cheek. And I think the best singer songwriters do that when he writes these songs and then he sings them in his voice. It's just like it was meant to be. He's writing for his voice and makes it one of those treasures to listen to, like a Gordon Lightfoot, a Jimmy Buffett that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to do with this music appreciation segment here is, like, especially with Croce, we talk about his songs sound so different, some of them. So, like, you hear him and you go, oh, that's the same guy, and it's really amazing how you can dig into these guys because you knew one or two of their songs, and then you maybe knew the other songs, but you didn't know they were the same singer-songwriter. And if I can say something kind of embarrassing, Croce, he came out in 72. This is one of the earliest artists we've talked about. So, like, his songs were getting played nonstop on the radio when we were like 2 years old, 1 year old. And I can swear I can hear him in the crib. And I always thought Bad Leroy Brown and Big Bad Jim, I think for most of my life, I kind of conflicted those songs as being one song because you would hear one.
Oh, yeah, you don't mess around with Jim.
Yeah.
Don't tug on Superman's cape and then Venus guy in the whole damn town. Yeah.
Yeah, they sound like part one and part two of a song. And
yeah, it could be like a suite. Yeah.
So when we were young, I'd hear one and the other, and I just assumed I was always hearing the same song. But then I go, oh, there's two songs?
Well, and then with his passing in September of 73, when then people, of course, really kind of rediscover, and he had that posthumous #1 hit with Time in a Bottle, kind of the same way that Otis Redding had a #1 hit with Sitting on the Dock of the Bay after his untimely passing. Also in a plane crash. Between plane crashes, motorcycle crashes, and drug overdosing, we've lost a lot of fantastic musical talent.
I think you just described all the artists of the 70s and the 80s right there.
Pretty much. Yeah, he was flying from one college to another when the plane crashed, chalked up to Pilot Air. Probably one of the saddest things about that is he was getting homesick on the tour and wrote a letter to his wife that he was thinking about maybe taking a break from music and writing some short stories and movies, and it arrives at home after his death.
Yeah, that's just that sounds like a Jim Croce song almost.
It's the most Jim Croce way to die, unfortunately.
Yeah, he's a great artist. Check him out. Hopefully we gave you some snippets of songs and you didn't, like us, we didn't realize they were the same guy. For most of my life, I thought Bad Leroy Brown and Big Bad Jim were the same song.
All our hope is for when you're playing your Spotify or your Apple Music and you got it on kind of a daily mix, and then you get a Jim Croce song right after a Bill Withers song.
There you go.
Then our job as 70s memory sharers would be complete. Last episode, we did something from the 80s. Let's look at a band from the 80s. Kind of goes along with that whole Minnesota, Minneapolis area sound, although they're not from Minneapolis. They're from Austin, but they're not from Austin, Texas. They're from Austin, Minnesota. And that would be the Gear Daddies.
Yeah. As you can hear as we play these songs here, I just love Martin Zeller, the lead singer's low resonation voice.
Yeah, I wanna drive the Zamboni
that's what really carries. I mean, they have great music too, but his voice just carries it for me.
Yeah, that's what stands out to me most is his voice, and then some good songwriting. And then my first introduction to him would have been when they put that kind of hidden track on a live album of I Wanna Drive the Zamboni. That speaks to us Minnesotans. Minnesotans want a border wall built to keep out all those Canadians trying to steal our Zamboni driving jobs.
That's it. And that song is interesting. I mean, like you said, it's a hidden track. It's kind of, I think they considered it a novelty song when they wrote it, but they've made way more money off that song because the NHL will often play it when there's Zamboni drivers out driving. So they get royalties on that. I know it's been in the movie Mighty Ducks, which is a Minnesota hockey movie.
Another hockey movie called Mystery Alaska.
Yep. Yeah. But I don't think the band's too upset about making it on a novelty because, I mean, their songs kind of have a sense of humor behind them anyways. A lot of them do.
Right. And then they never really, had that breakup. They just kind of maybe drifted apart because they didn't hit it big, or maybe they just wanted to do other things. But they still get together occasionally to play as the Gear Daddies. And then some of the members also play occasionally in other bands. So it's like keeping their love for the music alive without overdosing on drugs, dying in a plane crash, or dying in a motorcycle accident.
Yeah, I went and saw him one time in St. Paul at Martin Zeller, and this was back in the 90s, so it would have been big when Behind the Music was on. And he goes, if you guys are waiting for an episode of Behind the Music with the Gear Daddies, he goes, we're just too boring. He goes, there's nothing to talk about. So they were just a good functioning band that got together good and just, eventually had to break up, but they still are together. I know one of the members is on the Cactus Blossoms, and actually at my job, at my casino, they are performing the Cactus Blossoms and the Gear Daddies. So I will see them in 2 weeks here. And so they're still all performing. You can still go catch these guys.
Yeah, this is one, instead of looking for them on your Spotify or your Apple Music, is if you're in the upper Midwest, they might be playing during like the summer festival season in a town near you.
Yeah, and the song that we hear a lot here on the Minnesota radio is Little Red Corvette. Of course, the Gear Daddies did not write that song. I think we kind of know who wrote that song. But, they just do such a different take on it. You can get it on YouTube. You can't get it on Spotify and Apple for some reason, but it is on YouTube, and it's just a great rendition of that song because it's a lot different from the original, but it still has some of the, it's still the same song, so it kind of brings you back there too.
She had a pocket full of horses, Trojan and some of them new. But it was Saturday night, I guess that makes it all right. She said, what have I got to lose? And honey, I said, little red Corvette, baby, you're much too fast. Little red Corvette, you need love that's gonna last.
Shows the personality of the band, how they're like reinterpreting a song written by another Minnesota icon.
And then Brian, I know you like that song. Their big album was from 1990, Billy's Live Bait. And the first album was Stupid Boy. I think, is that one of the ones you like, Brian?
That's one of the ones that I like, and then they ended up performing that on Letterman, although it wasn't the whole band, it was just Zeller, and I'd have to double check who else it was. And the Letterman kind of did that because they had their own World's Most Dangerous Band. We talked about that on the episode where we compared Letterman and Johnny Carson. I kind of got reintroduced to that song while I was looking for the Zamboni song, and then it's like, I'm just going to listen to more Gear Daddies, and then it's like, well, let's talk about it on the podcast.
Yeah, and I know Color of Her Eyes is a great song. That's number 8 on that album. And then, like we said, Zamboni's at number 11. So that's the only album available streaming, I believe, on Spotify and Apple is Billy's Live Bait, which is a shame because they have another great song called Drank So Much I Just Feel Stupid off their first album. I recommend that song too.
Now you might have to peruse the used album stores or CD stores and then actually find a record player, a CD player, blow the dust off it and give these tracks a listen.
We need Napster back. I remember I got all these songs downloaded them back on Napster back in the day.
Yeah, as long as you have to have a device that plays these things. So that completes this episode's music appreciation. Go listen to Zamboni. Maybe go try to check out the Gear Daddies in person. Get some Jim Croce into your into your playlist, and you'll be living the 70s and 80s lifestyle.
I come to find you're just another stupid boy. You're just another stupid boy. Yeah, I'd done anything for you. Just about anything you'd ask me to.
Hey, Mark, we made it.
We did.
Do you like it here? Check this out. Are you loving this?
Oh, it's the 70s versus 80s podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the one I was telling you about.
Oh, I'm a child of the 80s. I love this kind of stuff.
Well, you were born in the 70s,
I was born in the 70s.
and I was born in 1980, so...
Exactly. So I
This
feel
is
kind of at
perfect
home
for
here.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know where else I feel at home is on our podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike have been nice enough to allow us a little bit of time on their show to plug our two shows, the Film Studies podcast and the Or Is It Movie podcast. Both you can find on Spotify, Apple Tunes, anywhere you get your favorite podcasts. So until we meet again, this is Derek saying, I want my MTV.
And I'm Mean Mark. Dynamite!
Mike, the 2024 Paris Summer Olympics will be starting later this month. We're here in July of 2024, and I thought here at the 70s versus 80s podcast, we should maybe take a trip down memory lane and briefly talk about the five Summer Olympics that were held in the 70s and 80s. Maybe share some of the memorable moments from each of those Olympics, try to rank them gold, silver, and bronze, and then look back to see which Olympiad was the most memorable.
Yeah, because the Olympics were huge when we were kids. I would get so excited when that theme music would come on when you hear it was going to start up. So let's do it.
Absolutely. So the first Summer Olympics of the 70s was 1972, held in Munich, Germany. First time the Olympics were held in Germany since the 1936 Olympics that were held right before World War II. And this is the last time that Germany has hosted the Olympics. What stands out to you looking back in memories from 1972's Summer Games held in Munich?
Well, obviously, I think the first thing that comes to mind is the tragedy they had towards the end of it. So I think that's the big one. And then the other one for me, and it's kind of the ones I was going to talk about, was Mark Spitz winning the 7 gold medals.
Yeah, those were my number one and number two. The Munich massacre, where some Palestinian terrorists held Israeli athletes hostage and ended up, I think they killed 2 right away and then ended up killing 11 more, and really kind of changed the tone for future Olympics, where they started to have more security and athletes' villages so that they could have a better sense of security. But that for sure for me was number one. Mark Spitz, he won the 7 gold medals, all of them in world record times. That was quite the performance. And then I had a third one. The USSR men's basketball game might be the most controversial finish in Olympic Games history, maybe in Games history, where they ended up replaying the last bit of the game so many times, and eventually the Soviets won, and it's very controversial in basketball circles to this day.
The Soviet Union got the ball again, this time at the end line. Now the guy takes and he throws the ball inbounds. It was a freak play that Alexander Belov could ever really catch the ball, but he catches it, lays the ball in, and the horn goes off. So now they are the champions.
The final buzzer sounds for the second time. This time there was no replay. The Soviet Union 51, the United States 50.
Yeah, I remember that was going off at the finishing clock went off at the wrong time a few times. The United States, who had only ever won gold in basketball, so ended up getting the silver, and they refused. They never showed up to accept their silver medals.
Yeah, definitely. So this one is, I think, pretty straightforward. That's been called the Munich Massacre, and there's even a really good documentary about it. Would be the gold medal for the most memorable thing, and memorable things don't always have to be positive things. Mark Spitz and the 7 gold medals would be second, and then the a USSR basketball game would be the bronze medalist.
Okay, I want to say one more thing about Mark Spitz. He said he was going to win 6 gold medals at the 68 Mexico games. He only got like a bronze and a silver. So then he goes on. It was just amazing that he goes on to win 7 in 1972. And then we talk about records. They always get broken. But this one was not broke for 36 years until 2008 with Michael Phelps, of course. That just shows you what a great accomplishment that was.
And the 70s versus 80s podcast would fully endorse Mark Spitz with having the best 1970s mustache.
Yeah, Andy told the Russian coach it made him more aerodynamic. So,
all right. So moving on, the 1976 Summer Games were held in Canada, Montreal, Canada. First time and only time the Summer Games have been held in Canada. One thing of note that 29 mostly African countries boycotted because the New Zealand national, football team or rugby team or cricket team or something played a match in South Africa. Part of them, they had the apartheid thing, and so they wanted the Olympic Committee to ban New Zealand, but New Zealand still was able to participate, so 29 countries boycotted. That's going to be a theme here coming up for the next few ones as well.
Yeah, the Olympics start getting used as a political tool. We think all this stuff is new, happens in today's day, but this was going on way back then too.
And if any of our New Zealand listeners want to chime in, if they were alive back then and remember this, we'd certainly be interested in hearing your comments. Well, with that, what were some of the memorable events that stood out to you?
For me, it was Mr. Wheaties box, Bruce Jenner setting the world record in the decathlon. You know, it was an event that America didn't really take that serious. And same thing, he came in 10th place in Munich, and so then he comes up and sets a world record in 1976 in Montreal.
Americans will not pay any attention to a sport until an American does well at it, and then we all get on board and we put him on the Wheaties box.
Yeah, he was on the Wheaties box. You know, Wheaties box used to change its athletes all the time. And then I remember for us, they got stuck on Bruce Jenner for like a decade or so. They had him on there forever. And I had the board game. I had the Bruce Jenner decathlon board game. We'll have to talk about that in some episode when we do board games, but I just love that. Bruce was the first one. He grabbed the American flag and did a victory lap with that. Now all the athletes, no matter what country they're from, will do that victory lap with their flag. I guess he's the one that started it. So Bruce Jenner, not sure what he's doing these days, but
that's one of the. Haven't heard from Bruce Jenner in a while.
No. What are some of your memories?
But yeah, that's the first image that stands out is Bruce Jenner wrapped in the flag. I had Bruce Jenner as well, winning the decathlon, and Nadia Comaneci.
Comaneci, I think it was. Yeah,
I think it's Comaneci. Scored the first perfect 10 for women in Olympic competition at that Olympic Games. So that was a moment that stood out. And then my other one, Edwin Moses, all of 20 years old and only having done the 400-meter hurdles for 1 year, sets the world record and wins gold in the 400 hurdles. And I thought that's quite the accomplishment for only having been doing the sport, especially a technical sport. Hurdles is a lot more technical even than sprinting. To be a quick learner and win the gold and set world record. So those were my three.
Well, yeah, that makes sense that he'd be that young because we do hear him in later Olympics when he's kind of an elder. So that's why he got to so many Olympics. That makes sense.
Yeah. But I think the lasting, endearing memory is Bruce Jenner wrapped in the flag after having won decathlon gold, getting on the Wheaties box. I think that would be the gold medalist. Where do you come down on for the silver medalist?
It'd have to be Natalie Coman. No, I can't say her name.
Nadia?
No gymnast in Olympic history had ever received a perfect score, and to do it with a compulsory routine was phenomenal. It brought the crowd to its feet and brought Nadia back on stage for a curtain call.
That was just a big, huge thing. That was just, everybody's like, it's a 10. Nobody's ever scored a 10 before. That was just miraculous.
All right. And then we'll have Edwin Moses. Listeners, if you have memories, certainly that aren't being named here, certainly go to the Facebook page and share them. We're both such Olympic fans that we'll certainly love to get that kind of feedback. So 1980, the games were held in Moscow. And 66 countries, led by the United States, boycotted because of the invasion of Afghanistan. I think that was in 79. And so that war going on. And for me, that's number one. The biggest story memory out of the 1980 Olympic Games was the huge amount of boycotts. It was one of the more sparser attended Olympics in modern history.
Yeah, it was almost like I call it the blackout Olympics because it was almost like it didn't happen. I know there's a lot of great athletes. Like I know Bill Rogers was a great marathoner, and he was just having his best year ever, and he didn't get to go to the Olympics because we boycotted. So a lot of great athletes had to go 8 years between Olympics. And a lot of stuff can change in 8 years. So
well, it can, because that's always when we talk about great Olympians, how Jesse Owens had such a fantastic performance at the 1936 Olympics, but then they didn't have Olympiads in 40 or 44. And so he wasn't able to go back and have these multiple Olympic performances because of them being not held. And in this case, the boycott of so many countries. So that's dominating, I think, as the gold medal. I had to kind of struggle because they weren't really then televised in the U.S. And it would have been a struggle anyways with the huge time zone difference. The only other things I had the USSR women's gymnastics team won their 8th consecutive team gold medal, which will be interesting because of what happens in 1984. And in weightlifting, and this will also have a thing with the next time, there were 18 world records, 100 Olympic records, and 108 national records set in the weightlifting portion of the Olympics.
Wow, that sounds like it was really juiced that year. So
might be something to that.
There might be something to that. There's not much to talk about that Olympics, except it was the 4th Olympics in a row that started with M. So 68, we got Mexico City, 72, Munich, 76, Montreal, and then 1980, Moscow. So 4 M's in a row. I don't think that's ever been duplicated.
So there's a bidding process to get the Olympics. And in 70, to get the 80 Olympics, it was like, I don't know if it's awarded like in 75. It's like awarded the year before the Olympics are held so that there can be a ceremony of passing off the Olympic torch and everything to the next host city. And it had come down to Los Angeles and Moscow won. Well, then in 77, it was only Los Angeles and Tehran, Iran, that were bidding for it. And then when they were going to decide, I think in 79, Tehran had the Shah had fallen and Ayatollah Khomeini had taken over. And so they pulled out their bid, obviously. And so the United States won with Los Angeles as the only bid. It was funny because in 1932, when Los Angeles, I believe, hosted the Olympics, right, they were also the only bid city. So it sounds like they don't want to go to the United States, because every time the United States bid from 44, bidding for the 48 games through the Los Angeles ones, they had entries, like bids in every single one, and we never got chosen until they were the only choice to make.
And that's with this year's Olympics. I think Los Angeles came in second, but I think they're supposed to be the 2028.
They're the 2028 host.
I believe.
Yeah. 2028 will be in Los Angeles.
So speaking of Los Angeles.
Yeah, so Los Angeles hosted in 1984. Well, yeah, so I think my rankings was just the protest of 66 countries sitting out was the gold medal, and then the silver and bronze were just, the juicing of the weightlifters and the women's Olympic team winning, the USSR women's Olympic team winning like 8 consecutive team gold medals over, at a span 32 years. So 1984 was in Los Angeles, second time Los Angeles had hosted, and 14, mainly Eastern Bloc countries, including USSR and East Germany, boycotted those games. Although it did set a record for most countries participating at the time, just because as the Olympics kind of were gaining force after what had happened in World War II, and then with the Munich massacre, more teams were having Olympic committees and sending athletes to participate. So what would be your memories? So 1984, I know you've talked about it before with the McDonald's promotion on giving out prizes based on the medals, and the United States just went crazy and won like 83 gold medals that year.
The United States won 83 gold medals, 174 total, and second was Romania. I don't know why they didn't boycott, but they were down to 20 gold and 50, so they won like over four times what the second place country won. And you're exactly right. When I think of the 84 Olympics, I think of the we win, you win promotion at McDonald's. That's where you'd get the little scratch off. You'd get archery or water polo or something like that. And then if the United States got a gold medal, you'd get a Big Mac. If they got a silver medal, you get French fries. And if they got a bronze, you got Coke.
Feel like you're part of the Olympic action. Play McDonald's. When the U.S. wins, you win Olympic game.
What's your event here?
Boxing. If the U.S. wins, then I win.
When the U.S. wins a medal in the event on your game card, you win a Big Mac. Or regular fries. Or regular Coca-Cola. Or win up to $10,000 instantly. So go to McDonald's and collect your game cards, because when the U.S. wins, hey, you win.
I'm in training.
And like we just said, consider they had to go off the 1976 stats because the 1980 Olympics, like we just talked about, were boycotted. So the United States had 34 gold medals in the 1976 Olympics. So then they win 83 in the boycotted 1984 Olympics. So basically, you were getting free food every time you want. Like I said before, we were giving it away. We're like, I just cannot eat another Big Mac. So you'd just be giving the cards away. The other people would be giving them to you. Everybody was just kind of sick of eating McDonald's. The biggest promotion that McDonald's ever they won't say how much they lost, but they think it's just in the millions that they lost doing that promotion.
Yeah.
The little scratch offs weren't like environmentally safe. They were those little metal shavings, so they weren't the most environmentally safe. Now they use like a water based one. So
yeah.
What are your memories, Brian?
My memory is first and foremost was Carl Lewis and his quest to duplicate Jesse Owens' feat in 1936 with 4 medals in track and field in the 100, 200 long jump and the 4x100 relay, and he did it. So that to me was my most memorable event, because I remember we're cheering for him to be able to do it, especially when you didn't get to watch the Olympics in 1980, especially after the 1980 Winter Olympics were such a big deal. The second one is Mary Lou Retton became kind of a poster child of these Olympics as well. She was the first women's gymnast not from an Eastern European country to win the gold medal in the all-around competition. I think Romania stayed in so that they could win the team competition gold and end the Soviets' 8 Olympiad streak of gold medals. But Mary Lou Retton won the women's all-around gold, breaking the streak of all these Eastern Europeans like Olga Korbut, Nadia Comaneci, and those gymnasts.
If the Eastern Bloc countries like Russia ever got back, because now it's kind of a Chinese-dominated event.
Yeah, definitely in gymnastics. Eastern Bloc countries, not so much. It's the Chinese and the United States in the Women's Olympics. So we'd rank them. The gold medal winner would be the McDonald's, having to give out so much free food on the 83 medals won by the United States.
That's my scorching memory of that, yeah.
I remember Carl Lewis's achievement more than Mary Lou Retton, so it'd be Carl Lewis with the silver, Mary Lou Retton with the bronze.
Yeah, the Carl Lewis and Mary Lou Retton, I remember them both. It's hard to choose between them, but I'll go with you there, Ryan. I think you're right.
All right. So then our last Olympiad of the 70s and 80s decades was in Seoul, South Korea in 1988. It's the second time held in Asia. The 1964 Olympics were held in Tokyo. And this would be the last Olympic Games for the USSR and East Germany and those Eastern Bloc countries before kind of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the change to kind of what they are today. And it's the first one that didn't have a boycott for 3 Olympiads. Everybody showed up.
Yeah, it was exciting to see everybody playing nice together finally after all those years.
Yeah, everybody in the pool. So how are we going to have some memories? I remember this being a clouded by steroid usage is one of the things.
Yeah, this was the Ben Johnson year in the 100-meter final where You can see a great documentary about it, but one of the athletes that came in, he's one of the fastest men in the world because he was in the gold medal 100-meter dash. But he said he thought it was a false start because when the race started, he looked up and there was like 6 runners ahead, just flying ahead of him, and he couldn't believe that they were that fast. He thought it was a false start.
Yeah, and he beat the showdown between Ben Johnson was out of Canada, and I don't know if he had the same suppliers, Barry Bonds, and then Carl Lewis for the United States, and they were almost like a heavyweight prize fight where they were yapping back and forth at each other in the media, and then Ben Johnson won, and then it was taken away from him because of steroid usage.
Yeah, so Ben Johnson surprisingly won. Like you said, that was a good analogy. It was like a heavyweight fight. The two of them were just going at each other. And then everybody knew Carl Lewis was going to win, and then Ben Johnson won. And then Canada was just ecstatic for like 48 hours, and then they took the medal away from him for pretty much like we said, there was at least 6 people juiced in that race, though. But Ben Johnson's the one everybody remembers because he got his gold medal taken away.
Do you think Canada would have pulled the United States, and if Ben Johnson would have kept his gold medal, if everyone would have stopped playing hockey and started trying to be 100-meter sprinters?
Well, in Canada, it's so cold, it's hard to get your muscles limber for most of the year. You can only run short distances a couple times a year. So I don't know. We'd have to see about that. But he was a big deal in Canada. He was like a huge star.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then I have it as also the year of FloJo. Florence Griffith Joyner hit our consciousness, Olympic record in the 100, and still standing to this day, world record in the 200 as for track performance.
Yeah, she had the colorful personality. Yep.
Yeah, and then I think this is the Olympics where Greg Louganis hit his head on the springboard, like in the 3rd round of the dives, and still went on to win gold.
Yeah, he cut his head open. I remember watching that live. That was pretty nuts.
It was spooky. And then my daughter, when she was swimming, and then they would do dives, and she tried diving for a season. And as a parent sitting there watching, especially if you're at an angle where you think they're so close to hitting themselves on the springboard, nervous and anxious every time before, and then it's like, cleansing breath when they hit the water.
Yeah, and it's that happened back in '88. It's surprising stuff like that doesn't happen more often.
Yeah, exactly. Happen more often. All right, so how would we rank these? The steroid controversy going to be our gold medal, and the heavyweight showdown between Carl Lewis and Ben Johnson that kind of got overshadowed by the steroid allegations and stripping the medal.
That's what I remember that Olympics for. Just the elation of Ben Johnson, just big surprise win, and then like 24 hours, 48 hours later, it was stripped from him, and then the narrative just changed so quickly.
Yeah, and that overshadowed FloJo's pretty good performance, and Greg Louganis, Ben Johnson steroid situation. FloJo and Greg Louganis are gold, silver, and bronze medal winners. So, with the benefit of the decades, the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and now into the 2020s, looking back, which one of these Olympiads was the most memorable to a child of the 70s and 80s?
I'm going to go with 84 just because of all those, all those McDonald's commercials where they just had all the athletes. And, Mary Lou Retton just became a face. She was just on everything. And, Carl Lewis was famous. So that's kind of like the age when we were coming in. And then, these guys were just becoming super famous. And it was just 84. It was just nice to have an Olympics since we skipped 80. So it was like, 8 years between Summer Olympics. So that's the one that always stand out for me. What say you, Brian?
I'm totally on board with that. Became a Carl Lewis fan in that 84 games. Frustrated in 88. And then in 92, he'd made the Olympic team, but he wasn't like the main person for going for the 100 or the 200. He ended up just being an alternate. And then someone got hurt, so he got put on the relay team. And looking back at this now, it's like an old man triumphing. They put him at anchor, and it was a close race. I can't remember who the other country was. We were watching it at Doolittle's in Eagan, Minnesota for a little local flavor. He got the baton, and the old Carl Lewis just flashed back. He ended up taking him to gold, and it's like, yes, even though I was only 22 at the time, like, yes, an old man triumphing. Now looking back on it in my 50s, it's like, yes, old men can still get the job done.
We talked about my obsession with Eddie Murphy a couple episodes ago. I love his Carl Lewis imitation.
I'm Carl Lewis, man. I race horses. I'm the fastest man in the world. I am the fastest man in the world, Joe Piscopo.
You're the fastest man in the world.
In the world.
Just kept saying he's the fastest man in the world a million times. That was his whole invitation.
Well, Carl Lewis is one that I think his parents or one of his parents were a track coach, and he would have perfect form when he was younger trying to keep up with everyone, but he didn't really hit a growth spurt until like late in high school or almost college, and then the times really started coming down. So he was one that he really was honing the technique before his physical ability came in. Kind of maybe the opposite of Usain Bolt, where Usain Bolt's just a freak of nature with his height, and you had to kind of teach him the technique to get him to world record speed, whereas Carl Lewis had the technique, and we were just waiting for him, or he was just waiting to grow to be able to compete and eventually win these gold medals. Well, I think 84 would be the gold medal winner for the most memorable. And then I think 72, even though it's a tragedy, it's memorable for being a tragedy and kind of changing the way the security precautions at future Olympic Games. I think 72 would be the silver medalist. And then who's going to be the bronze medalist and who's going to be off the podium between the other three? I think for sure the Moscow ones, they're only memorable because we didn't make any memories there. The United States wasn't participating. We didn't watch it on TV.
Yeah, the 1980 Olympics are off the podium. That was a blackout Olympics that we just don't really think about. And it sounds like there was a lot of steroid use besides that.
Well, yeah, because in 84 in the weightlifting, it's like, I think 97 of the top 100 ranked weightlifters in the world were part of the boycott. And because maybe that the Eastern Bloc countries are a little lax on their drug testing.
Okay, so should we go with the bronze medal? We'll give it to 88 because all the countries are back together finally.
I think so. It's nobody's boycotting. All the people are there. We had some controversy. We had FloJo. We had some personality, and it was the last one where you could beat the USSR as the opponent. You know, the Rocky script of the U.S. beating the USSR came to its final chapter in the 1988 Seoul Games.
Yeah, like I said, those Olympic Games were just seared into our memories as kids. I think of the theme music coming on when you'd watch it on TV, and we got to remember this was before. I mean, they would do tape delays, but this is when you could only watch it on the one NBC or ABC. You couldn't watch it on all the different streaming things like they have set up now. So it really was a different time. I would like to thank Brian Malika for producing this episode. Of course, Brian Malika was produced by Mr. and Mrs. Malika. Thank you for joining us on another episode of the 70s versus the 80s. Keep it classy, my fellow babies.
They got 5 years, I would know you, but I don't. And after all this time, I've come to find you're just another stupid boy. You're just another stupid boy. Yeah, I'd done anything for you. Just about anything you'd ask me to.
Like, of course, I'm Carl Lewis. I'm the fastest man in the world. I'm the fastest man in the world. I'm Carl Lewis.